Good morning. Last summer, Carol and I had an opportunity to take a trip across the pond. It's one of the things that we are trying to enjoy in retirement is doing some travel. And we returned as part of that trip to Scotland, a country that is one of our favorites, and spent a few days in Edinburgh, Scotland. And while we were there, we were guided by a local expert who really impressed us. Just a great guy and really knowledgeable and obviously very passionate about his home country. I wanted to reach out to him after we returned from Scotland to find out if he'd be willing to come and share some of that passion with us here, and he agreed. You're going to hear from Richard Dawson today about Scotland, about Edinburgh, about his own story. So put on the brakes, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation because it's time for Coffee Breaks with Steve. Well, welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve. I am Steve, and this is the show where we come together around our virtual coffee table each week and join the conversation to chat about interesting topics with amazing guests. If you're joining us for the first time today, welcome. And if you've been with us before, welcome back. We do want to make sure that we hear from you, that we see you, that we know that you're here. So if you are joining us in the chat, do say hi. And when we get to our conversation today with Richard, make sure that you participate in the conversation, share your comments, your questions, your thoughts. We always ask that we keep the chat appropriate and relevant. And other than that, we just want to have a great conversation around our virtual coffee table today. So welcome. Just want to find out how people are doing. I don't know if we got a lot of people on here yet, not seeing much activity in the chat. That's fine. People can join in as they have the opportunity to connect. Know there can be a lot going on the weekend, and I'm just glad to have you here if you're able to be here. We are having, I would say, pretty typical winter weather here in Spokane. We had snow a week or so ago, and we had quite a bit of snow fall in a fairly short period of time. And by now, it's pretty much all melted off. We're back to kind of overcast, foggy, rainy. What's it like where you're at? What's the weather been like? What's going on? And let us know in the chat how you're doing. And we're going to get I want to get to our conversation with Richard here pretty soon. But excuse me, wait, I need this, obviously. That felt good. Just want to give you a little bit of background before we even get into our sweet and savory about the trip that we took. And we talked about it at the time when Carol and I were able to go to Scotland and some places in Europe last August, September. And we've been to Scotland a couple of previous occasions, primarily to some of the basic tourist areas, right? You know, we've been to Glasgow, we've been to Edinburgh, we've been to Stirling, and we got to revisit some of those places on this trip, along with some other locations that were new for us. But Scotland is one of those countries. Richard's going to talk about this during our conversation. I think a lot of people, it's in some ways, it's a hidden gem. I mean, everybody knows about Scotland. You've heard of Scotland. You've seen TV shows and movies that take place in Scotland. And while they can be heavily fictionalized in those settings, it still can be an eye-opener in terms of the beauty of the country and the culture and some concepts of history, and we always enjoy that. Carol and I have talked about the fact that when we travel, we are not so much the people that want to be sitting on a beach someplace, just soaking in the sun while we're sitting on the shore of even a lovely Mediterranean coastline or something. We are the people who want to get into places where we can learn about history, we can learn about culture. We're not simply taking the trips to take an extension course somewhere, but we do like to we do like to get exposed to the culture and the background and history of countries. And that's why you've seen us on the show various times, and even recently have as guests people that we've met in some of these locations and people who have been part of that, adding to the culture and the education. So my hope is that you don't mind too much if we have we not that long ago had a laird and lady of one of the clans of Scotland on here just before the holidays. But we're back to Scotland today, and I'm okay with that, and hopefully you are too. All right, listen, I do want to share our sweet and savory, so we're going to get to that and just let you know some things that are going on. The very first thing you may recall last week, we talked about Izzy Stein and about this mini tour that she is currently has going on and is participating in. And Izzy was kind enough to give us a little message and let us know how things are going. I'm going to share that right now, a little message from Izzy Stein.
Hey Coffee Breaks crew, this is Izzy. I hope you guys are having the best weekend, and I wanted to let you know that I'm finishing up my mini tour in January. I'll be in Ann Arbor, Michigan on the 25th, and then I'll be in Austin, Texas on the 29th. If you're gonna be in either of these cities, or if you know anyone who's gonna be in either of these cities, let me know. I'd love to meet you and your people. And that's it, bye.
Thanks, Izzy. Thank you for letting us know what's going on, for reaching out to us and sharing a little bit of your tour with us. And we have Izzy's website up here. If you want to go there, you can find out a little bit more about that tour and about the places that Izzy is, the things that she's doing and the places where she is appearing. And obviously, if you're on the West Coast like me, you're not going to frequently be able to get to some of the locations, but every now and then we get to one of the areas where Izzy is performing. We've had the opportunity to see her perform live on more than one occasion, and that is always an absolute thrill. I want to share some birthdays that are coming up this week. Hi, Jerry. See, Jerry is in the chat here, and just encourage you, if you're joining us in the chat or joining us on the show live, make sure that you do participate in the chat to let us know that you are here. I want to share some things that are going on. Birthdays. I'm going to share some birthdays that are coming up in this week and celebrate those. Evan Fort celebrating a birthday on the 18th. By the way, from this picture, Evan is the guy with the glasses, not the cap sitting on his shoulder. Evan is celebrating a birthday this week, so happy birthday to Evan. And also, Whitney K. Wood. I don't know if you recall a while back, a couple of years back, the K. Woods were on here to talk about the documentary they were in the process of producing, To Die For, which is about some of the dangers and issues around dyes in foods and medicine and other things and how they could affect people. Whitney is celebrating a birthday this week on the 19th, so happy birthday to Whitney K. Wood. And David Sparks celebrating a birthday as well on the 22nd, coming up on, Thursday, the 22nd. So happy birthday to David. And to all of you who are celebrating. And if anyone on here has a special day this week that I did not recognize, maybe didn't have on my calendar, can you please let us know in the chat so we can make sure that we do celebrate with you and acknowledge your special day. It doesn't have to be a birthday. Could be an anniversary, could be another special day for you or someone very close to you that you want to make sure that we recognize. Let us know that. Same thing with if it's maybe a special day coming up in February, March, April, sometime later this year, and you would like us to put it on our calendar so that we can celebrate that and acknowledge that with you or your loved one, you can send us an email at cbwsteve@comcast.net. We will make sure we get it on our calendar, and we will make sure that we celebrate your special day with you when the time comes. All right. I want to get to our guest conversation today. And just tell you a little bit first about our guest and his background as we get ready to share the conversation. Richard Dawson. Now, some of you may go, I know that name. Yes, there was a famous actor and game show host by the name of Richard Dawson back in the 70s and 80s. This is a different Richard Dawson, so bear with me. Richard was born in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1974. A descendant of John Crabbe of Crabbe's whiskey fame, Richard was educated at the Edinburgh Academy School, which was founded as part of the Scottish Enlightenment in 1824. He followed that education with studies at the renowned St. Andrews University, Scotland's oldest university, where he majored in French. It was during his university years that Richard first discovered tourist guiding while working for American Council for International Studies as a summer job in 1996. That brief summer experience planted a seed that would return later. After graduation from college, Richard's first professional job was with PwC in London as a chartered accountant. He transferred to their Tokyo office in 2001. And while in Japan, Richard was chieftain of the St. Andrews Society of Yokohama and Tokyo, during which time he organized and hosted burn suppers, Scottish dances, even an annual Highland Games in Japan, successfully, by the way. He also taught wine studies, and in 2014 started his own wine and hospitality business in Tokyo. Following the passing of his younger brother, and with government travel restrictions during COVID halting the hospitality business, Richard returned to Edinburgh in 2022. After returning to his homeland, Richard's passion for guiding tours resumed, and he began conducting tours of Edinburgh. He is currently pursuing a Blue Badge tourist guiding course with Scottish Tourist Guides Association, hoping to complete that program in March of this year, and from that be able to expand his tour guiding to encompass the whole of Scotland. I can tell you from our personal experience with Richard in Edinburgh that that kind of tour guiding from him will be phenomenal. And now here's my conversation that you can share in with Richard Dawson. Richard, welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure.
I think people are always interested when we have the opportunity to talk to folks who are coming to us from somewhere outside of the United States to learn just a little bit more about your own background and upbringing, particularly for someone like you who shares so much of your own culture and your country through providing tours. And I'm just curious, first of all, about what your growing up in Scotland was like. What was life like as a child there?
Well, first of all, I went to a very traditional school with a history dating back, would you believe it, to 1824.
Wow.
So already I had this kind of quite traditional kind of schooling. You know, the typical traditional Scottish school with a Greek slogan. I think the slogan ran, always or ever to excel. So you went into the assembly with that feeling kind of over you. And then I had these great teachers. I remember one particular history teacher who was so enthusiastic that at some point it kind of rubbed off on me. So I had this very nice schooling, and then I was surrounded by a family with really quite deep Scottish roots. So my grandmother, she came from an old whiskey making family. So there was always that kind of spirit in the family, and there were always whiskey bottles everywhere. And then my grandfather was actually from another town in Scotland called Aberdeen, which is quite famous for its oil industry these days, but has a much richer history dating back almost 1,000 years to when it was one of the first universities in Scotland. So there was always that kind of weight of history somewhere in the background.
Yeah, and I wondered about that as well, Richard, in terms of how the early influences in your life led you toward a career in which you share so much history as a guide and as a local expert. And would you say that was largely family, or were there other influences that fed into that?
Well, there was a bit of a long meander because so I went to school in Edinburgh, and then I went to university actually in St Andrews, of course, the home of golf. Your listeners will know it for that for the world over. And I majored in French, so nothing to do with really Scotland. And so my kind of aspirations were in France. And actually, what took me into tour guiding, the first spark was I had this amazing summer job in my last couple of years. It was recommended by a friend, actually. And I was working for an American company called ACIS. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, American Council for International Studies. And so I had this wonderful opportunity to be a tour manager for young Americans coming over to Europe and show them the best of France. Imagine that as a summer job. Huh. That kind of planted a seed for this life. But then I went off on a long kind of professional journey, which took me to Japan for 20 years. And in fact, I've only just recently come back from Japan 3 years ago.
Wow. And so was the tour process part of your career throughout your adult life, or was this something that when you came back to Scotland kind of emerged or re-emerged?
Well, so that tour manager experience kind of planted a seed, and it was the best job I ever had. So in Japan, I had initially a professional job. That's what led me there. That came to an end. So I was running a wine bar. And I was also, after that, I was running a small Airbnb business, a small guest house as well. So I was always sort of interested in kind of sharing culture and sharing experiences. And, we always say distance makes the heart grow fonder. And when I was in Japan, all these thousands of miles from Scotland, it really made me feel very proud to be Scottish. And believe it or not, I was actually chieftain of the Scottish Society there. So I used to organise burn suppers, other Scottish events, even Highland games over in Japan. Although, as you can tell from my rather slight shape, I wasn't the best person to be involved in the heavy events.
My wife and I have had the privilege of visiting Scotland on a few occasions, and it's a wonderful place throughout the country. But I think a lot of people formed their impressions of Scotland from movies and TV shows. And people have seen Braveheart, which of course covers a period in history and also covers a lot of fiction. Or shows like Outlander, where they have developed these certain ideas in their mind of Scotland coming from a historical perspective and even coming from a cultural perspective. Can you talk about, from those perspectives, kind of what is accurate to form, and also maybe some misconceptions that people gather from just what they see in the movies and television shows, and some of the things that you like to dispel and maybe get people a little more focused on when you're providing tours and giving that background?
No, that's a great question. Of course, whenever I introduce Edinburgh Castle, outside Edinburgh Castle, there are two statues. As they're going in on the left-hand side, there's a statue of King Robert the Bruce, who led Scotland to a great victory against our arch enemies, the English, in 1314. It's one of these dates that's firmly impressed on Scots' minds because the victories were so few and far between, unfortunately. And then on the right-hand side, we've got another great military or independence hero, William Wallace, but I always introduce him as Mel Gibson because that's how he's better known from Braveheart. But from my point of view, I think it's these films, so Braveheart, Outlander, and others, they may not be strictly 100% factually true, but the fact is that they create this great engagement with Scotland and makes people interested about Scotland. And whether they're 100% accurate or not, that's not kind of the point, because they're telling a story rather than portraying themselves as kind of a historical documentary. So to the extent that they make people passionate or interested in the country, I think bring it on. And when I'm taking people around, if I can dispel a few myths, why not?
Why do you personally feel, from your own experience, your own upbringing, your own work as a tour guide, why do you feel it is important for people from other places to come and visit Scotland? What is your pitch for that?
Well, I think Scotland is a sort of It's a famous country. People have heard of it, of course, but it's somewhat under the radar, I feel. It's something of a hidden gem. And I say that because I've got all these friends who are very well traveled, and they come to visit us in Edinburgh. And for many of them, it's the first time actually to come to Edinburgh. And they look at themselves and they think, we've been to Paris, London, New York, all these famous global cities, yet they haven't been to Edinburgh, and they sort of question why haven't been here, that it's taken them so long. So I like this fact of Scotland, well, this line of Scotland being something of an undiscovered place. We have increasing tourist numbers, but it's still, in the grand scheme of things, compared to France and other places, not that many people come to Scotland. So there's, and I think that one of the great reasons for coming here is simply because there's so much in such a short and such a small space. So, the overall size of Scotland is, I think it's around about 30,000 square miles. So that's roughly the size of South Carolina.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea. Yet, within this comparatively small area, you've got so many layers of not only human history, but there's something for everybody. You've got geology, you've got great richness of geography, and a great art scene, and lots to eat and drink as well. So there's so much to explore here in such a small area.
Is there a particular time of year that you think that you recommend to people that they visit Scotland, or particularly Edinburgh? Or do you think that just the diversity of what happens at various times of the year makes it a place that visit throughout the year, or any time of the year? Maybe if you've been there in the summer, come back in the winter. What is your recommendation regarding the best seasons to visit?
That's a great question. Now it's actually very cold at the moment, and Edinburgh used to be very seasonal. It still is, but I've noticed more and more that it's becoming more and more of a sort of 365-day city. So you see people throughout the city, and the cities you can visit at any point, because there's always festivals or events happening.
Right.
Much of the country is probably a little bit, it's quite cold, obviously, in winter time, so that might put people off. But on the other hand, you can actually ski, believe it or not, in Scotland. So if you're a winter sports fan, there really is something for everybody throughout the season. Over on the west coast, people are often put off from June through to midsummer or late summer by one of the great highland foes, which afflicts that part of the country, and that takes the form of these tiny little insects, the Scottish equivalent of mosquitoes. We call these midges.
Midges, yes. And we were prepared for that. We were just there this past summer, and we were all prepared. And I don't know that we encountered any of the midges, which was fine. I had no problem not encountering them, but we were aware of that and prepared for that if it came up. But yes,
so best to be prepared and not to see them.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
When in your own work as a guide, do you primarily focus on Edinburgh? Have you given tours in other parts of the country? What is your particular area?
Well, actually, I'm relatively new to this. So actually, I have to confess that my first season was last year. So I focus primarily on Edinburgh, but I'm training. I've almost completed my training to cover the whole of Scotland. Nice. So over the last year, I did a couple of trips northward, covering the kind of standard circuit, which is Inverness, Loch Ness, and through Glencoe, and then
to the highlands. Yeah.
But,
lovely. Yeah. Do you have a personal favorite place in Scotland outside of Edinburgh that you just like to visit?
I would say this, of course, but I've got so many. Yeah. But can I answer that question by giving you a sort of ideal tour of Scotland, the best off?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think maybe first we have to acknowledge the great kind of natural story of the country. And so if there's anybody interested in geology, this is a geologist's dream, because Scotland was actually formed about 450 million years ago. the various kind of pieces came together. So I'd have to show you some of that majestic nature. So I might take you up to Skye to see the Cooling Mountains. Yeah. I'm not sure that's a place you've been to, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
These are really astonishing mountains, and throughout Scotland, you can within a day's travel, you can see a huge difference in terms of nature. So I'd like to introduce you to that, and then in terms of the human story, maybe we could start off with a Neolithic site. So rather than go to Egypt and see the pyramids, come to Scotland and see one of the prehistoric sites. So I might take you up to Orkney, where there's a site called Skara Brae, and so that dates back about 5,000 years ago. And then we've got obviously the more modern story side. I have to show you a castle, wouldn't I? There are thousands of castles in the country, so I think my personal favourite would be Stirling Castle, which is just outside Edinburgh. It's absolutely wonderful, and it's near the Battle of Bannockburn, so you can see that as well. I'd have to show you a battlefield as well. We're scarred with battlefields, so you might like to come and see Culloden, where famously that's where the Jacobite dream died in 1746.
Yeah.
And so there's all that kind of history, and there's lots of sport to do. I'd like to, if there are any golfing fans, I'd like to, of course, take you up to St Andrews.
St Andrews, yeah.
And we'd have to relax with some great Scottish food at some point as well.
Just you talking about it now, all of a sudden, I'm ready to come back, be back there again. That's excellent. You talked about all those years in Japan, and you've obviously traveled to different places in the world. Are there any places that are on your bucket list that you would say, just worldwide, outside of Scotland, that you have yet to visit that you want to get to as a tourist?
Well, I don't know the US as well as I would like to and should do. So being inspired by books like Jack Kerouac's On the Road, a road trip around the US would be a wonderful thing to do. But to be honest, the older I get, the more I see travel as just a way of connecting with people. So these days I enjoy traveling to go and visit people. So kind of almost regardless of where they live, just being able to spend time with people is, for me, one of the major draws and attractions of traveling.
If people want to find out, I know, as you said, Richard, you're just now branching out and developing a broader base in terms of your own work as a tour guide. But if people wanted to follow up and get in touch with you and find out about taking a tour of Edinburgh, or perhaps get in touch with you to find out when and how they could connect to get a broader tour, is there a way that they can find you online?
Well, that's very kind of you to ask that question. I don't actually have a website as yet, because so far it's just been through referrals and word of mouth. So I can share an email until that website is up and running. Otherwise, there's LinkedIn and all the various social networks. Very good.
And we will make sure that we capture and share some of that information. So if folks would like to follow up with you, they can certainly do that. Now, Richard, is there anything else that you would just want to add for our audience about your work, about Scotland, about anything that you just think is worth covering before we finish up today?
Well, thank you for the question. Well, as I said before, I think the question, Scotland being somewhat of an under the radar country, it's definitely worth visiting. Often people kind of tag Scotland onto a wider trip and end up just spending a couple of days here. It's definitely worth, if you're making the effort to come here, to try to build in a few more days, a week perhaps. And I know the Scottish diaspora is absolutely huge. So maybe many of your listeners might have family connections back with Scotland. So it's well worth looking into that and thinking about the heritage as well.
I agree with that. And both my wife and I do have been able to trace ancestry not that many generations back to Scotland, which in and of itself becomes an attraction. There is something about that, isn't there, Richard, that when you do discover that diaspora, that all of a sudden it stops becoming a foreign place and has that little sense of home. And I would also echo that and just recommend that people who have not yet found Scotland as a destination take the time to do that, because it is a beautiful country. Richard Dawson, I want to thank you once again for taking the time to join us, for sharing your own experience and sharing about your beautiful country. We wish you the very best as you continue to pursue your career, and as you do such an amazing job of sharing Scotland, sharing Edinburgh and beyond with people that you have the chance to encounter. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Steve.
Just a fun conversation. I know I say that a lot when it comes to our guests, but just a tremendous amount of fun to talk to Richard. And I mean, just hearing about some of his story, you know, growing up in a very traditional classical education environment, going to a university like St. Andrews, one of the most famous universities in the world. If you don't know that, that's also where, you know, he mentioned golf there, but even St. Andrews University is where William and Kate met, the royals. And just a tremendous amount. It's spending 20 years in Japan and conducting conducting Scottish rites, Scottish celebrations while in Japan, and doing so successfully. It was just impresses me a lot. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed that. If you were watching live or if you tune in later, do make sure that you include your comments. It will be something that Richard can come in and take a look at. He can add his own comments, answer questions that you may have. And I know that a lot of you tune in later on to hang on. Okay, I'm going to try to talk now. I know that a lot of you tune in later on to watch this and you see the recorded version of this, but you can still add comments in the chats, either on Facebook or YouTube. I do want to let you know some things that are coming up in the next week, at least. We're still working on some things beyond that, but just sharing a little bit of what we have planned. Hey everybody, did you know that a lot of the common items and devices that we use and encounter every day have technical or official names that we may not be familiar with? We're going to play a little trivia game and see how many of those official names we all know. So you'll want to join us for that conversation. All right. Well, listen, we're going to be able to finish actually a little bit early today, which is always a bit of a treat. You can get on with your Saturday, and I can get on with mine too. I do want to say thank you once again to Richard Dawson for taking the time to join us from across the pond in Scotland to share his story and to share so much about the beauty and the culture of Scotland, of his home city of Edinburgh and beyond. If this conversation with him and the things that he shared did not encourage you, inspire you, motivate you to want to visit Scotland, I don't know what will. But I would also just add my personal opinion that Scotland is one of my favorite places to visit. And I would strongly encourage that if you have not had a chance to visit that country, do so. And if you have, go back. There's still plenty to see there. For a country that is not huge in square miles, there is so much diversity and so many different things to see and to experience in that country. Anyway, I do want to, again, thank you, Richard. Thank you to you for being a part of the Brew Crew, for helping us to make sure that Coffee Breaks with Steve, now we've been on for, over 6.5 years. We're going to be coming up this spring on our 7th anniversary of doing this. We have had a total of 302 episodes through today. I don't know if you knew that, but more than 300 episodes. 169 of our episodes have been with guests on the show. People like Richard, who come on here and share their stories. And I am so humbled and so grateful for that. 114 unique individuals. Some have come back more than once, but 114 individuals have joined us as guests on this show. That to me is special. And that to me is the reason why I continue to do this, along with the fact that I get to sit around the virtual coffee table with you and have these conversations. So thank you for that. And Richard, you're very welcome, and thank you. And I want to wish you all the very best. I want to remind you, wherever you are in the world, there are just so many different things going on that we all have passion for something. We all have people whose lives we can touch. We all have opportunities to do things with our voices, with our hands, with our feet, with our actions, with whatever resources we have available. And I think we not only have the opportunity to do that, we all have an obligation to take advantage of those opportunities and the things that are pressing on us to do. So please find a way to make a difference in your world this week. God bless you. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Coffee Breaks with Steve.